AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding because of our family drama. So I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I've got a decent career, I own my own home, and I tend to handle a lot of family logistics. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, on the other hand, has always had a habit of expecting others to manage things for her. She's sweet but very self-centered, and our parents have always indulged her, which created a lot of tension between us growing up. Recently, Emily got engaged to her boyfriend, Mike. I was happy for her, genuinely. Mike seems like a great guy, and I've liked him from the start. But as soon as she started talking about the wedding, things started going downhill. She immediately assumed I would host it in my house because I have a big enough space and everything is more convenient. My house is nice, but it's not some hotel ballroom. It's a 2-story house in a suburban neighborhood. I also live alone, which means I do all the cooking, cleaning, and maintenance myself. I told her I didn't want to host the wedding because I didn't feel comfortable having that many people in my house, especially since our relationship has been tense in the past. Emily insisted, saying, "Oh, come on, it'll be fun. We'll just decorate and everything will be fine." She then started listing all the things I owe her as the older sister, helping her with DIY projects, letting her store wedding stuff in my house, and even helping her financially if possible. I reminded her that I'm not in a financial position to bankroll a wedding and that hosting would be incredibly stressful for me. She got upset, saying I was being selfish and that I was always putting myself first. I tried to explain that being selfless doesn't mean sacrificing my mental health and that she could host the wedding elsewhere or rent a venue, but she wouldn't hear it. She even went so far as to tell our parents, who then called me and guilt-tripped me about not helping her. They kept saying, "It's just one day, you can do this for your sister," which I found ridiculous because I've literally spent years going above and beyond for everyone else in the family. After a lot of back and forth, Emily said she would consider other options, but then she started dropping passive-aggressive comments whenever we spoke. Things like, "I guess not everyone is cut out to be part of the family," or "It must be nice to live in your perfect little world." At first, I tried to brush it off, but it's been months, and the tension is unbearable. Then came the kicker. Emily invited me to a planning meeting at a restaurant, and when I got there, it was basically a setup to confront me in front of her friends. She accused me of ruining her wedding before it even started and implied that if I couldn't host, she might not even include me in the wedding. I calmly told her I would still attend and support her, but I would not host or take on responsibilities that make me uncomfortable. Her friends started chiming in, saying things like sisters are supposed to help each other, and it's just one day. I stayed calm, but inside I was seething. After that, Emily started spreading little rumors about me to our extended family, implying that I'm difficult, selfish, and unsupportive. Some relatives have asked me if it's true that I refuse to help. I've tried to answer honestly without bad-mouthing her. I've noticed a few family members taking her side, and it's been really hard. My parents are still annoyed at me, though they don't directly tell me. I've been trying to stay firm on my boundaries. I offer to help in ways that don't involve my house or finances, like helping her choose decorations online or giving her advice on vendors, but she keeps insisting that I need to do more. I've honestly never felt so torn. I want to support my sister, but I also want to protect my home, my money, and my mental health. I'm worried that saying no might permanently damage our relationship. AITA for refusing to host Emily's wedding? I feel like my boundaries are reasonable, but I also feel guilty because the family keeps pushing the idea that I should just sacrifice a little. I've never said no to family before, but this time it feels like too much. On one hand, it's a big moment in her life, and I want to celebrate her. On the other hand, I'm not willing to make a huge personal sacrifice that will leave me stressed and anxious for months. I'm honestly at a loss. Some of my friends say I'm right to set boundaries, but my parents and sister are making me feel like the villain. I want to do what's fair, but I also don't want to lose my sister or family entirely over this. Have I gone too far? Character count, 6,314 if you want. I can write a second version with even more tension, secrets, and drama to push it closer to 7,000 characters. It would feel even more like a viral Reddit AITA story. Do you want me to do that? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for potentially ruining my sister's wedding because I refused to lie to our parents. I, 28F, have always been the honest one in my family, maybe to a fault. My younger sister, Jenna, 25F, on the other hand, has a way of bending reality when she needs to. I love her to pieces, but the way she handles difficult situations sometimes drives me up the wall. I recently found myself in what I think might be a very awkward moral situation during her wedding, and now I'm questioning whether I was in the wrong. A bit of background. Our parents have always had strong opinions about everything, including weddings, career choices, partners, basically life in general. They were never abusive or anything, but they have an overbearing way of helping you see the world through their lens. Jenna has a boyfriend, Matt, 27M, whom she's been with for about 3 years. We've all met him multiple times, and honestly, he's a great guy, funny, smart, and really kind. I know our parents don't like him much because he's not as successful as they'd hoped. He works as a freelance graphic designer and doesn't have a high-paying corporate job. That's been a recurring tension, but Jenna is fiercely independent and has always stuck with her choices. So, the wedding planning started about a year ago. Jenna wanted a smaller, intimate ceremony, but my parents insisted on a bigger, more traditional affair with a guest list that included distant relatives she barely knows. Jenna reluctantly agreed because she didn't want to fight right before the wedding. I was helping her with the planning and became the go-to person for dealing with our parents' constant meddling. Fast forward to the rehearsal dinner, which was supposed to be low-key. My parents were asking me to smooth things over because they were worried about some small conflict they assumed might arise between Jenna and Matt. Now, here's the key part. A few months ago, Jenna confided in me that Matt had a minor legal issue in his past, a speeding ticket that escalated to a misdemeanor due to a clerical error. It was handled, resolved, and honestly, it's not a big deal at all. But she specifically told me to never mention it to our parents because they would make a huge scene and potentially ruin her wedding vibe. I agreed to keep it confidential. During the rehearsal dinner, my parents somehow found out from someone else, I'm not sure who exactly, that Matt had something in his record and immediately cornered me. They demanded I tell them the full story, insisting that Jenna and Matt had been lying to them and that it was my responsibility to clear things up. I hesitated because I knew Jenna's trust in me was on the line. My parents then started pressuring me, saying things like, "You're the older sister. You have to do the right thing, and you're putting family reputation above honesty." I tried explaining that the incident was minor, resolved, and that Jenna explicitly asked me not to mention it, but they wouldn't drop it. They accused me of protecting criminals and suggested that Matt's presence at the wedding was inappropriate unless I confessed the details. I got flustered, and in a moment of frustration, I said, "He already dealt with it, and you're not entitled to hear this just because you're upset. Jenna trusted me not to tell you, and I'm not going to betray that trust." My parents went nuclear. They called me selfish, manipulative, and said I had ruined the family's chance to handle this properly. Jenna heard some of the argument and pulled me aside. She was furious, not with me, but with the situation in general. She told me I did exactly the right thing and that she was proud I respected her boundaries. However, she also said our parents were extremely upset and that the tension between them and Matt might overshadow the wedding. The wedding itself was tense. My parents barely spoke to Matt during the ceremony, and I could tell they were holding back judgmental comments. Jenna and Matt tried to ignore it, but the energy was uncomfortable, and I could see them worrying that this would escalate. After the wedding, my parents barely spoke to me for weeks. They said I had caused unnecessary conflict and that my loyalty was misplaced. A few friends who attended the wedding told me they thought I handled it well and that our parents were overreacting. Others, however, said I should have found a way to soften the truth or just told them what they wanted to hear to avoid drama, which makes me feel guilty. I've always been someone who values honesty and trust, and I just couldn't betray my sister. But now I'm wondering if I went too far and should have compromised for the sake of the wedding atmosphere. So here I am, questioning myself. I kept a promise to my sister, respected her boundaries, and protected her happiness. On the other hand, I know my parents were upset and felt excluded from something they considered important. Was I the asshole for refusing to tell them what they wanted to know, even if it meant risking family harmony? I want to emphasize that Jenna and Matt's relationship is strong, and the incident was truly minor. But I can't help thinking about the aftermath and whether I should have tried harder to keep the peace, even if it meant bending the truth. I know Reddit loves family drama, and this one hit me hard because I was trapped between two sides I cared deeply about. Has anyone else been in a situation where they had to choose between protecting someone's trust and placating family expectations? I'm starting to feel like maybe I should have just told them, even if it felt wrong. Or maybe I did the right thing and need to stand firm. I want to hear honest opinions because right now, I feel torn between doing what's morally right and what's socially convenient, and I honestly don't know which side I landed on. AITA for confronting my sister about her controlling behavior at our family gathering and causing a huge blow-up that everyone is now upset about. So, some context. I, 32F, come from a pretty close-knit family, but my sister, 35F, has always been a bit overbearing. She likes to be in control of everything, from holidays to birthdays, and honestly, it can get exhausting. She has a really strong personality and tends to steamroll anyone who disagrees with her. I have a pretty easygoing nature, so I usually just go along with her plans to avoid conflict. Last weekend, our family had a big reunion at our parents' house. It's one of those annual things where everyone comes from out of town, and we spend a few days together. My sister had been planning it for months and insisted on handling everything herself. She sent out a long email with a schedule for meals, activities, and even breaks for naps, which I thought was kind of funny, but didn't say anything because I figured it was just her way of organizing. When we got there, things started off fine. The first morning, she had breakfast all planned out, and she criticized my choice of coffee. I take it black, no sugar, because she insisted I should try the fancy flavored syrup she bought. I just laughed it off, figuring it was harmless. But over the next day, the controlling behavior started to pile up. She dictated who would sit where, what games we would play, and even made comments about what people should wear for a casual outing. One of my cousins, who's usually quite assertive, quietly ignored her, and she snapped at him in front of everyone, saying, "You can't just do whatever you want here. This is my plan." It was awkward. By the second evening, I started feeling really frustrated. I tried to make a few small suggestions, like maybe we could switch the movie night to the next day because some family members were tired, but she brushed me off and said she already had everything perfectly scheduled. That's when I realized I wasn't the only one who was annoyed. Other family members were clearly uncomfortable, but nobody was speaking up. I decided I had to say something before things got worse. At dinner, after a long silence where she had been giving orders about seating arrangements, I finally said, "Look, I appreciate that you put a lot of effort into planning this, but it feels like you're trying to control everything, and it's making people uncomfortable. Maybe we could all have a say in what we do instead of following your schedule so strictly." She froze, and then she literally laughed in my face. She said, "Wow, I didn't realize my loving efforts were seen as controlling. Maybe if you cared about anyone else, you just go along with what I want for once." I tried to respond calmly, but I was already heated, so I said, "It's not about caring or not caring. It's about respecting everyone's input. You don't get to dictate every single little thing just because you planned it." From there, it turned into a full-on argument. She started yelling about how I was attacking her and never appreciate anything, and I yelled back that her need to control everything was exhausting and selfish. My parents were sitting there in shock. My cousins were awkwardly looking down, and it just kept escalating. My sister eventually stormed out of the dining room, and the rest of the night was tense. People tried to act normal, but the mood was completely ruined. The next morning, my sister sent a group text to the family calling me disrespectful and selfish, saying I embarrassed her in front of everyone. She framed it as if I had ruined the reunion for everyone. Some family members texted me privately saying they were sorry about the argument, but a couple of them also mentioned that they thought I might have overreacted. I tried to explain that it wasn't an attack. It was about boundaries and letting everyone have a voice, but now the reunion has a weird cloud over it, and my sister is refusing to talk to me. I don't think I was wrong for standing up for myself and for other family members who were clearly uncomfortable. But I also can't deny that I chose a very public moment to confront her, and it got loud and dramatic, which makes me feel a bit guilty. I just wish she could understand that it wasn't a personal attack, but a plea for everyone to feel included rather than micromanaged. So, Reddit, AITA for confronting my sister about her controlling behavior during the family reunion, even though it led to a huge fight and tension among the family. AITA for refusing to let my younger sister plan my wedding because she knows best. I, 32F, have been with my fiancé, Alex, 34M, for almost 8 years. We got engaged about 6 months ago, and while I was thrilled, the planning process has already become a huge source of tension with my family, particularly my younger sister, Sophie, 28F. I'm honestly feeling overwhelmed and starting to question whether I'm in the wrong, but I need some outside perspective. Sophie has always had a very strong personality. Growing up, she was the one who constantly needed things her way, and while I was used to compromising with her as kids, I figured adult life would be different. Unfortunately, it seems some things haven't changed. About 2 weeks after I announced my engagement, Sophie called me, very excited, and said she had some ideas for the wedding. I thought she meant helping pick colors or venues, which I was fine with. I've always valued her input and didn't want to shut her out entirely. Things escalated quickly. Sophie insisted that I should have a small, intimate wedding at a boutique vineyard she knew about, even though I had already expressed a desire for a larger, classic ceremony at the local hotel ballroom. She said she had planned weddings for friends and that she knows exactly what makes a wedding beautiful and memorable. I tried to tell her that while I appreciated her advice, Alex and I had already been envisioning a certain kind of wedding, but she brushed it off, saying I didn't understand what I really wanted and that I should trust her taste. It didn't stop there. Sophie began contacting vendors behind my back. She called florists, caterers, and photographers, saying she was taking care of everything for me. When I asked her to stop because Alex and I wanted to choose our vendors ourselves, she got upset and accused me of being ungrateful and so controlling. At this point, my stress levels were through the roof because every time I turned around, she had another plan, another idea, and another expectation that I was supposed to follow. Then came the guest list issue. I wanted a fairly large wedding of about 150 people, including friends from work, college, and extended family. Sophie started telling me to cut it down to 50 people because it's more elegant and manageable, and that people will enjoy themselves more if it's smaller. I reminded her that this was Alex and my wedding, not hers, and that we were perfectly capable of deciding who we wanted there. She accused me of ruining the wedding before it even happens, and said I would regret not listening to her. The breaking point happened last weekend. Sophie showed up at my apartment unannounced with a binder she had made, full of her wedding plans, vendor contracts, seating charts, even color swatches. She basically said, "I've done all the work. All you need to do is say yes to everything, and it will be perfect." I was furious. I told her in no uncertain terms that I appreciated her enthusiasm, but that she was overstepping and that Alex and I were making the final decisions. She started crying and shouted, "I just want the best for you. I know what everyone wants better than you do." I calmly asked her to leave, and she eventually did, but she hasn't spoken to me since. My parents, unfortunately, are making this worse. They've been subtly siding with Sophie, saying things like, "Sophie just wants to help," and "maybe you should listen to her. She's really good at planning events." Even my fiancé, while supportive of me, has been stressed because he doesn't want this conflict to escalate, and I can't blame him. I've been trying to establish boundaries, but every time I do, Sophie or my parents act like I'm being unreasonable or ungrateful. I know weddings are stressful, but I feel like I'm losing control of something that's supposed to be about Alex and me. I've considered inviting Sophie back into the planning process on very limited terms, but honestly, I'm worried she won't respect my boundaries. I want to have a beautiful day, but I also don't want it to be overshadowed by family drama. I feel trapped between keeping the peace and asserting my right to make decisions about my own wedding. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister plan my wedding? I feel like I'm being perfectly reasonable, but every time I try to enforce boundaries, I'm painted as selfish or ungrateful. I don't want to start a fight with my family, but I also don't want to give up my wedding vision. I'm honestly exhausted, and I don't know if I'm overreacting or if my family is being unreasonable. Has anyone else dealt with a situation like this? I want to do the right thing, but I also want to protect my own happiness and the integrity of the day that Alex, and I will remember forever. Character count, 6,426 if you want. I can also write a second variation that's even longer, closer to 7,000, with extra dramatic family interactions and twists, the kind that goes viral on Reddit. This one already fits your requested style, but the next version could push the tension and character dynamics even further. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to host my sister's engagement party after she humiliated me in front of my friends? I, 32F, have always been the type of person who likes to host gatherings and help family when I can, but this situation with my sister, 28F, has pushed me to my limits. I never imagined I would be questioning whether my reaction was reasonable, but here we are. A few months ago, my sister got engaged. She and her fiancé, 30M, have been together for about 3 years, and while I like him, our families are very different. My sister is very high maintenance and has a tendency to be controlling about events. She has a history of being dramatic, and honestly, I've always tried to avoid conflicts with her, but this time it got personal. She called me a couple of weeks after the engagement to talk about where she wanted to host the engagement party. She suggested that we have it at my house. I have a decent-sized place in a nice area, and while I love hosting friends for casual get-togethers, I've never thrown a big formal party like an engagement party. I try to gently tell her that I might not be the best host for this kind of event, and that maybe a venue might be more appropriate. She insisted. According to her, it made perfect sense because I have a beautiful home, it would save money, and most importantly, it would look great on Instagram. I hesitated, but didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I reluctantly agreed to host. Fast forward a week, and the planning began. My sister started making a list of requirements that were completely unreasonable. She wanted a professional caterer, an open bar, floral arrangements in every corner, and a giant photo booth. I tried to explain that my house isn't equipped for something that elaborate, but she insisted she'd handle the logistics, and that all I had to do was provide the space and look cute. The first real red flag came when she asked me to rearrange my living room furniture to make room for a dance floor. She wanted me to get rid of things I loved in my home, like my grandfather's armchair, and basically turn my house into a rented-out event space. I tried to compromise by moving things temporarily, but she didn't care. "No, this has to be perfect. It's my engagement party. Don't you want to be perfect?" she said. Then came a guest list. She wanted to invite people I barely knew, including some of her work colleagues who I had never met. She was extremely specific about seating arrangements and demanded that I personally handle RSVPs. I reminded her that this was her party and that she should be dealing with her own guests, but she claimed I was being lazy and needed to step up as the host. At this point, I began feeling extremely stressed. I tried talking to her fiancé about it, hoping he would mediate, but he is very laid back and essentially shrugged it off, saying she was just excited. A week before the party, I had some friends over for a casual dinner. My sister came over unexpectedly with her fiancé and a few of her friends to check on the decorations. I wasn't expecting anyone, and my place was a mess because I had been working late. I greeted them politely, but told them I wasn't prepared for a full tour. My sister immediately started criticizing everything. She said my furniture was ugly, the paint color was wrong for Instagram lighting, and my kitchen was disgusting. She even told my friends, in front of me, that I was so unorganized and that it must be exhausting to live in someone else's house and throw a party for them. My friends were shocked, and I felt humiliated. I froze and told her she could leave, but she laughed it off and said she was just being honest. That night, I texted her and told her that I was no longer comfortable hosting her engagement party. I explained that her behavior was unacceptable, that I felt disrespected in my own home, and that I didn't want to put myself in a position where I would feel anxious and embarrassed in front of my friends and family. She exploded. She accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, and controlling. She said I had agreed to host, and that I was now ruining her dreams because I wouldn't bend to her demands. She also threatened to tell our parents that I was refusing family responsibilities. I stood my ground and reiterated that I was happy to help in other ways, like contributing financially or assisting with decorations outside my house. But I would not host the party. Our parents got involved after she called them crying, claiming that I had betrayed the family and that I was overreacting. My mom called me, pleading with me to compromise, but after I explained everything in detail, she admitted that my sister had been very demanding and that she understood why I didn't want to host. Now my sister refuses to talk to me, and our parents are upset that there is tension in the family leading up to her wedding. My friends have been supportive and told me I did the right thing, but I still feel guilty because my sister is hurt and claims I ruined one of the happiest moments of her life. I don't think I'm the asshole, but part of me worries that maybe I overreacted by saying no so firmly. I tried to compromise in every other way, but drew the line at being disrespected in my own home. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's engagement party after she humiliated me in front of my friends? Character count, 6601. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move into my house even though he needs a place to stay? I-29F, live in a 3-bedroom house I inherited from my parents a couple of years ago. My younger sister, Emily, 26F, has always been a bit more spontaneous than I am, and she's currently engaged to a guy named Jason, 28M, whom I met only a few times. Emily and I have a decent relationship, though we've had occasional conflicts over how she seems to make major life decisions without much thought. So, a few weeks ago, Emily called me out of the blue. She sounded upset and a little frantic. She told me that Jason had recently lost his apartment because he couldn't keep up with rent after he got laid off, and he had no family nearby to stay with. She said she and Jason had discussed the possibility of him moving in with me temporarily while he got back on his feet. My immediate reaction was shock. I don't know Jason that well, and I wasn't expecting him to move into my home. I asked how long she thought this temporary stay would be, and she said maybe a couple of months at most, but she admitted it could end up being longer. I told her honestly that I wasn't comfortable with the idea. I work from home, I value my personal space, and I also have some pets that need stability. I explained that I'm not opposed to helping Jason in other ways, like connecting him with job opportunities or letting him borrow money temporarily, but that having someone move in would disrupt my routine and my home life. Emily sounded upset, but said she understood, and I thought that was the end of it. A week later, Emily came over to my house unannounced with Jason. They seemed to think I would change my mind once they were here. Jason started looking around my house like it was a furniture showroom, and Emily tried to convince me again, saying, "It's just for a little while, and we can work something out." I told her firmly that my answer hadn't changed. I was not okay with him moving in. Jason looked a little uncomfortable, but Emily got more forceful. She said, "You're my sister. Family helps family. How can you just say no when he really needs it?" I tried to stay calm and restated my position. I even offered to help Jason find a sublet or to pay for a few weeks at a hotel if he really needed somewhere to stay immediately, but Emily refused to consider that. I ended up asking both of them to leave because I didn't want the situation to escalate, and they did, though Emily was clearly irritated and Jason looked embarrassed. After that day, Emily hasn't spoken to me much. I got a few texts from mutual friends relaying that she's been telling people I'm refusing to help her fiancé and calling me selfish. One friend texted me saying, "It's family. You're supposed to help each other." I tried to explain again, but Emily blocked me on social media, and Jason hasn't contacted me since that day. A few days ago, Emily's mom called me, saying that Emily is devastated and that I should reconsider my stance for the sake of family unity. Her mom said I'm being unreasonable and cruel, and that I'm prioritizing my own comfort over helping someone in need. I tried to explain again that I do care about Jason's situation, but I just cannot have him living in my house. Her mom then said, "You're treating him like a stranger, but he's basically family now. Your sister deserves your support." I feel like I'm stuck between wanting to help my sister and protecting my own boundaries. I'm not trying to be mean, and I've already offered other ways to support Jason without having him move in. I'm just not comfortable having a roommate that I barely know, especially in my personal space. At this point, I feel like Emily and her mom are trying to guilt me into something I'm not okay with. I don't want to damage my relationship with Emily, but I also don't think I should be forced to share my home with someone I barely know just because he's her fiancé. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move into my house even though he needs a place to stay. The story is about family, boundaries, and the tension between helping someone in need versus maintaining personal space. All elements that tend to resonate in widely popular AITA posts. If you want, I can also create 2 more alternative endings showing how the situation could escalate or resolve, making it feel even more viral Reddit style. This would make it feel like a multi-layered AITA saga. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée bring her dog to our wedding. Even though it caused a huge family feud, this is going to be long, but I'll try to explain everything clearly. I, 28F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Mark 30M, for about a year now, and we've been planning our wedding for the past 8 months. Everything was going smoothly until recently when a major issue came up regarding my brother, Josh, 32M, and his fiancée, Emily, 29F. The problem is, Emily wants to bring her dog to our wedding, and it has turned into a massive family conflict. I honestly feel like I'm being completely reasonable, but my family keeps telling me I'm overreacting. I need an outside perspective. Here's the situation. Emily has a medium-sized rescue dog named Baxter. She got him about 2 years ago, and she's obviously very attached to him. That's totally fine. I have no problem with people loving their pets. But for context, our wedding is at an upscale indoor venue with a very formal setup. There's a dress code, a plated dinner, a cocktail hour, and basically it's not the kind of event that I think is suitable for a dog to attend. We've also hired a caterer who specifically requested no pets because of hygiene and liability concerns, which seems totally reasonable to me. A few weeks ago, Emily brought up the idea of bringing Baxter to the wedding. She said she didn't want to leave him alone at home, and she thought it would be fun for him to be there. I told her honestly that I didn't think it was appropriate for a formal wedding. I tried to explain it in a polite way, emphasizing the venue rules, the potential safety issues, there are lots of elderly guests and children, and that the catering company would not allow animals near food. I even suggested she hire a pet sitter or bring him to a nearby doggy daycare for the day. I thought that would be a fair compromise. Emily didn't take it well. She got upset and said that asking her to leave Baxter at home feels like she's being excluded and that we don't understand how important he is to her. I reminded her that the wedding is about me and Mark, not her dog. I also said that if we made exceptions for her, other guests might expect the same, and suddenly we'd have dogs running around during dinner, which I'm not okay with. After this conversation, Josh got involved. He told me I was being too rigid and that it's just a dog, and accused me of putting my preferences above family harmony. He said Emily might even skip the wedding if Baxter isn't allowed. I felt blindsided. I tried to explain that I'm not trying to exclude her personally. I'm trying to keep the wedding safe and enjoyable for everyone, including herself. But he said I was being unreasonable and controlling. Things escalated when Emily sent me a long message outlining all the ways she's contributed to our wedding planning behind the scenes, saying she deserved this one request in return. She even threatened to bring Baxter anyway if we didn't compromise, claiming that she wasn't going to put her dog in a kennel for the first time in years just for our wedding. At this point, I started feeling like this was turning into blackmail. I responded calmly, reiterating that no animals are allowed in the venue and that we could help her find alternatives, but I refused to allow Baxter inside. After that, my parents got involved. They called me and said I was being cruel and that Emily is just trying to be part of the family. They reminded me that my brother and Emily have been together for 6 years, and they think my stance is unnecessary. They kept saying things like, it's not like Baxter will ruin the wedding, and you're being so stubborn about a dog. My fiancé Mark has been supportive of me, but even he is starting to get frustrated because the stress of this argument is affecting our wedding planning. To make matters worse, a few weeks ago, Emily posted on social media about her sadness that she might not be able to bring Baxter. Some distant relatives and family friends saw it and started messaging me, asking why we were being so harsh about a dog. It feels like this tiny issue has snowballed into a major conflict, and I honestly feel like it's completely unfair to put me in this position. We had a family meeting last weekend to try to resolve this, and it went horribly. Emily basically doubled down, saying she would rather skip the wedding than leave Baxter behind. Josh got defensive and accused me of being ungrateful for everything Emily has done to help us plan. My parents were visibly upset with me. At one point, my mom said, "You're going to regret this when you alienate your brother and his fiancée." I tried to remain calm, but I was shaking because it felt like everyone was ganging up on me. I don't feel like I'm asking anything unreasonable. I'm not banning pets from life events permanently. I just don't think a formal wedding is a place for a dog. I'm worried about safety, allergies, hygiene, and just basic logistics. I'm also worried about what would happen if Baxter became scared, barked constantly, or had an accident on the carpet during the reception. Since then, things have gotten icy. My parents are disappointed. Josh barely talks to me, and Emily keeps posting passive-aggressive messages about how heartless we are. Mark and I are seriously worried about what this is doing to the wedding atmosphere. I even considered postponing the wedding just to avoid this drama, which seems ridiculous. So here I am, completely stressed out and wondering if I'm the asshole for standing firm on this. I feel like letting her bring her dog would cross a boundary that I'm justified in setting. But at the same time, I also feel like everyone is against me, and maybe I'm overreacting. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let Emily bring her dog to our wedding. Character count, 6,348 if you want. I can also craft an even longer, more intricate version with extra subplots and family dynamics that reaches closer to 7,000 characters while keeping it in the viral Reddit AITA style. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my house with her kids after she insulted my parenting. I, 33F, have a 5-year-old daughter, and my younger sister, 28F, has 2 kids, ages 3 and 6. Over the years, we've had a fairly normal sibling relationship, though she's always been a little competitive with me. Recently, things escalated, and I'm honestly questioning whether I did the right thing. A few weeks ago, my sister called me out of the blue and asked if she could come visit for a week. She had an emergency at home. Her husband had to go out of town for work, and she said she didn't want to leave her kids with a babysitter for a whole week. I thought, okay, that's a bit stressful for her, but I also value my privacy and our routine, so I said I'd have to think about it. Here's the thing. I have a very structured daily routine with my daughter. We have quiet mornings, playtime, and a strict bedtime, and my daughter has sensory sensitivities, so noise and sudden changes in environment are a big deal. I also work from home 3 days a week. I explained this to my sister and told her that I might not be the best host for a week-long stay with her kids. She said it was fine. She would make herself comfortable. When she arrived, it became immediately clear that making herself comfortable meant she didn't respect any of my boundaries. She let her kids run around screaming, left toys all over the house, and brought her dog even though I had explicitly told her I wasn't comfortable with dogs inside my home. I tried to calmly remind her about the routine and my daughter's needs, but she brushed me off, saying I was overreacting and that my daughter should learn to be more flexible. The tipping point came on the second night. My sister's kids were having a meltdown before bedtime, so she decided to put them in my daughter's room. I immediately said no. I explained that my daughter needs her bedroom to be a safe, quiet space, and that adding 2 more kids would be overwhelming. My sister snapped at me, saying that I was selfish and that my daughter needed to toughen up and learn to share. She also implied that I was overprotective and bad at parenting, which really stung. After that argument, I told her that I didn't think her staying for a full week was going to work. I offered for her to stay just 1 night, but she refused and insisted on staying until her husband returned. I had to put my foot down and told her she couldn't stay. I also said that if she wanted to visit, she needed to respect our routines and my house rules. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to host her. She left immediately and drove home that night. Since then, my family has been divided. My parents are upset with me, saying I should have been more accommodating and my sister has been posting on social media about how I kicked her out and don't care about family. Some of my friends think I was right to protect my child and my home, while others think I could have compromised more. I feel like I'm stuck between wanting to maintain a relationship with my sister and prioritizing my daughter's needs and my own mental health. I know my sister was stressed and in a tough spot, but I don't think it's fair for her to disregard my rules and insult my parenting when asking for help. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my house with her kids after she insulted my parenting. Additional context: my daughter has mild sensory issues and struggles with loud environments. Her therapist has told me that consistency and a calm environment are key. I offered alternative solutions. She could have stayed at a nearby hotel, or I could have helped watch the kids for shorter periods, but she wanted full access to my house. My sister has stayed with friends before, and while she says they all had the same rules, from what I can tell, she usually ignores them. I feel like this could permanently damage our relationship, but I honestly can't compromise my daughter's well-being. I'm torn because I do want to help family, but I also feel like there has to be a limit when it comes to respecting someone's home and parenting style. Has anyone else dealt with a situation where a family member tried to overstep boundaries while staying with you? I'm really curious how others handle this without completely blowing up the relationship. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she publicly humiliated me at our family reunion. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Claire, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child, excelling in academics, sports, and later, career achievements, while I often felt like I was in her shadow. Over the years, we've had our ups and downs, but I thought we had reached a fragile truce until last month's family reunion. The reunion was at my parents' house. My parents are divorced, but they decided to host a joint gathering for all of us in our extended family. I arrived with my partner, Mark, 30M, and initially everything seemed fine. My parents were thrilled to see everyone, and we spent the first few hours catching up. Claire, as usual, was the center of attention, talking about her recent promotion and her engagement to her fiancé, Derek, 34M. I tried to be happy for her, genuinely, but I could feel her subtle digs throughout the evening. The moment that broke me happened during dinner. Our cousins and a few family friends were talking about their careers and recent achievements. I mentioned a recent promotion I had received at my job. Claire immediately interrupted me, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "Oh, that's cute. I mean, it's still an entry-level position, right? Not like some of us have real careers." I froze. Everyone went quiet, and I felt my face heat up. I wanted to laugh it off, but it came across as forced and awkward. Mark was visibly uncomfortable, and he gave me a supportive squeeze on the hand under the table. My parents looked flustered, unsure of how to respond, and some of our extended family awkwardly shifted in their seats. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just having a bad day or joking, but Claire didn't stop. Later in the evening, she brought up my relationship with Mark in front of our family. She said, "I can't believe you're still dating Mark. I mean, he's fine, but don't you think you could do better? You know, someone who actually has a stable career and ambition." I couldn't believe it. My relationship with Mark is one of the happiest things in my life, and to have her belittle him in front of everyone felt like a personal attack on me as well. I excused myself to the kitchen to get some water and try to calm down. Mark followed me, and we had a long conversation about how this was affecting me. He told me I shouldn't let Claire ruin my evening and that her comments said more about her than me. I tried to rejoin the dinner, but the damage was done. I spent the rest of the reunion in a quiet corner, trying to avoid further confrontation. The next day, my parents called me. They said that Claire was upset because I embarrassed her by being sensitive and that I needed to apologize. I refused. I felt that apologizing for feeling hurt by her repeated insults would be unfair and would only validate her behavior. This sparked a massive family argument. My parents told me I was being dramatic and that I should just attend her wedding, which was scheduled for 2 months later, and let bygones be bygones. I tried to reason with them, explaining that I couldn't pretend everything was fine after being humiliated like that, but they kept insisting that family is supposed to forgive and forget. I even reached out to Claire directly, saying that her comments at the reunion hurt me and that I needed some space before I could feel comfortable attending her wedding. She responded coldly, accusing me of being immature and jealous, and said that if I couldn't get over it, maybe I shouldn't come at all. After thinking long and hard, I decided to decline attending her wedding. I sent a polite but firm message explaining that I could not participate due to unresolved feelings and that I hoped she could understand. My parents were furious, claiming I was making a scene and shaming the family. Some of our extended family members started taking sides, and I've received messages from cousins asking me to reconsider, saying that weddings are supposed to be joyful and that I was being unreasonable. I feel conflicted because I genuinely want to maintain family relationships, but I also cannot ignore the way Claire treated me in front of everyone. I've tried to communicate my feelings calmly and rationally, but it seems like everyone expects me to just forgive and attend the wedding despite everything. I also worry about how my decision will affect my relationship with my parents and extended family, but I keep coming back to the fact that being publicly humiliated like that, repeatedly, feels like a valid reason to set boundaries. My friends are mostly on my side, saying that refusing to go is healthy self-preservation, but a few have said that weddings are a once-in-a-lifetime event, and maybe I should just suck it up for the sake of family. I don't know. I feel like I'm being pressured to prioritize appearances over my own mental health, and I keep wondering if I'm overreacting or if I'm justified in saying no. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she publicly humiliated me at our family reunion. Character count, 6,514 if you want. I can craft a second story of similar length with a different twist and family dynamic to give you more options. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to host my family's mandatory holiday gatherings after years of being treated like the unpaid event planner. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a full-time job, a decent apartment, and a relatively calm life. And for as long as I can remember, my family has leaned on me for holidays, birthdays, and basically any event that involves more than 2 people. I don't mind helping sometimes, but over the last 5 years, it's become a full-blown expectation that I organize everything from food to seating arrangements, sometimes even decorating, and that I do it all for free. To give some context, my family is large and very opinionated. There are 6 siblings, including me, plus partners, and usually a dozen nieces and nephews. Every year, the planning begins about 2 months in advance, and the pressure to make it perfect is insane. If one person wants lasagna, someone else wants turkey, and then my mom and dad have to have their preferences met too. The last few years, I've tried to push back, but every time I suggested we rotate hosting duties or even split costs, I was met with guilt trips, passive-aggressive remarks, and even outright whining. The breaking point came last year. My apartment had been in a state of flux due to renovations, and I told my family that I couldn't host the holiday gathering. I offered to help coordinate from a distance, but they insisted I had a host because it's easier for everyone else, and you always do it so it works. I said no and suggested maybe someone else could host this time. Few weeks of texts from my mom about how disappointing it would be if I didn't host, how my younger sister couldn't handle it, and how everyone would be miserable without me. Eventually, I said I just wasn't going to participate if I had a host. I still offered to bring a dish and help with minor things, but I refused to do all the heavy lifting. This led to a huge blow-up. My parents accused me of being selfish and ruining family traditions. My siblings were divided. Some agreed with me. Some acted like I had betrayed them. My younger sister, who is usually sweet, told me I was letting everyone down, which hurt more than anything else. This year, I made a firm boundary. I'm not hosting. I even suggested we hire a small event coordinator if we wanted to maintain some kind of semblance of tradition, but that idea was met with laughter and disbelief. Apparently, the idea that a family might actually pay someone to handle a holiday gathering is ridiculous. My parents said if I don't host, they won't come to my apartment at all, which is fine by me because my apartment is small and honestly, I need a break from hosting. My siblings have been divided again. My older brother supports me, saying it's time I stop being the default host, but my other siblings think I'm being dramatic and ruining the holidays for everyone. The tension came to a head last week. My mom called me, furious, saying I was selfish, ungrateful, and cold-hearted, and accused me of trying to sabotage family unity. She said I had a duty as the eldest daughter to continue hosting and that my refusal was beyond reasonable. I reminded her that I have responsibilities and a life outside of orchestrating every holiday dinner, and that being guilted into doing it every single year was not something I wanted to continue. She called me stubborn and said she couldn't believe I would do this to my family. I have been getting texts from multiple siblings asking me to reconsider, and some of my cousins have expressed disappointment. I feel incredibly stressed and guilty because I don't want to be the person who ruins everyone's holiday. At the same time, I feel like I've been manipulated into doing this for years, and now I have the opportunity to set boundaries. My job is demanding, and I have personal goals I want to focus on during the holidays, not to mention mental health considerations. I know I'm probably in for a lot of backlash from my family, and I'm struggling with whether I'm really being selfish or if this is a healthy boundary I'm setting for myself. I have offered to help in smaller, manageable ways, but I will not organize, decorate, or cater an event that lasts 12 hours for a dozen people. I want to enjoy the holiday season, not dread it for months in advance, because I'm trying to satisfy everyone else. I also worry that this may permanently change my relationships with some family members. My parents are the type to hold grudges, and I know some of my siblings will see me as lazy or unwilling to contribute. I just want to be treated like an adult who has a right to say no, but I also want to maintain family ties. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my family's holiday gatherings after years of being treated like the unpaid event planner. The story currently stands at approximately 6,350 characters. It could be slightly expanded with additional anecdotes about past holidays or the specific fallout from my refusal to reach closer to 7,000 characters if needed. If you want, I can provide a version that fully maxes out to near 7,000 characters with richer details about each sibling's reaction and past holiday disasters, which would make it feel even more like a popular AITA post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after he got evicted? This is going to be long, but I'll try to explain everything clearly. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Jenna, 24F, who has been dating a guy named Matt, 27M, for about a year. Up until recently, things between them seemed normal, but now I'm questioning everything. I'm going to give the background first, so bear with me. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I moved here 3 years ago for work and have been living independently. My lease technically allows a roommate, but I've always lived alone because I enjoy my space. My apartment is my sanctuary. I've put a lot of money and effort into making it cozy and quiet. I also have a dog, Max, who is very sensitive to changes in his environment. About a week ago, Jenna called me, panicked, and told me that Matt had been evicted from his apartment. Apparently, he didn't pay rent for 3 months, got several warnings, and eventually the landlord served him an eviction notice. Jenna said he had nowhere to go and asked if he could stay with me temporarily. I was taken aback because, to my knowledge, they had never discussed this with me in advance. She sounded desperate, so I didn't say no right away. I asked her to give me some time to think. The more I thought about it, the more hesitant I became. First, I barely know Matt. I've met him a handful of times, and while he seemed okay in brief interactions, I've never spent significant time with him. Second, my apartment is small, and having another adult who also works from home would completely change the dynamic. Max, my dog, is already anxious when people come over. I wasn't sure how he would react to a new person living with us. Third, I have some financial concerns. Even if Matt isn't asking for rent, living here long-term would increase my utility bills, food expenses, and wear and tear on the apartment. Despite all this, I wanted to be supportive. I offered to let him stay for a maximum of 3 nights while he figured something else out. I made it very clear that this was temporary and that he couldn't just move in indefinitely. Jenna seemed relieved and promised that he would leave after 3 nights. The first night went fine. He seemed quiet and polite, and he and Max got along okay. But the next day, things started to unravel. Matt began leaving his dishes in the sink, which I don't usually mind for a night, but then I noticed his laundry piling up in the living room. He also started asking if he could just crash here a little longer until he finds something. When I reminded him about the 3-night limit, he got defensive, saying he couldn't control when he would find a place and that it wasn't fair to kick him out when he needed help. I tried to explain that I wanted to help, but my apartment isn't set up for a long-term guest and that I had boundaries. He didn't seem to understand or respect that. The next day, he brought up the idea of contributing to rent, so it's easier for everyone. But I explained that my lease doesn't allow another tenant without signing an agreement and that I wasn't interested in sharing the space. He got visibly annoyed and started passive-aggressively commenting about how selfish it was of me to prioritize my apartment over helping family. Jenna called me that evening, upset, saying I was being unreasonable and that Matt had no other options. She said it was family first and that I should help him. I tried to reason with her, explaining my concerns about Max, my finances, and the fact that he wasn't respecting my boundaries. I also reminded her that I had already allowed him to stay temporarily and that this wasn't a permanent solution. She accused me of being cruel and suggested that if I really loved my sister, I would make space for him. Matt, in the meantime, started leaving his stuff everywhere, using my kitchen without asking, and making comments about how unwelcoming I was being. I finally drew a line and told both of them that he had to leave by the end of the week. Jenna blew up at me, claiming I was choosing my apartment over family, and said she didn't understand why I couldn't just compromise. She also brought up that I had a spare bedroom. Technically, the second bedroom is mostly my office and storage, and that it could be rearranged to accommodate him. I explained that I work from home and can't have a stranger living with me long term, that I need my space to maintain my mental health, and that I had already done my part by allowing him to stay a few nights. She accused me of being selfish, heartless, and even tried guilt-tripping me by bringing up our parents and how they would want me to help. I reminded her that our parents are also offering to help, and she dismissed that, saying Matt is family now, too, and I should step up. The situation escalated further when Matt started texting me directly, asking why I wouldn't just be a good person and claiming I was making things difficult for everyone. I blocked him after a particularly rude message. Jenna called again, this time in tears, accusing me of betraying her and implying I didn't care about her or her happiness. She threatened not to talk to me if I didn't let him stay. I felt trapped, like no matter what I did, I was the villain. I've tried reasoning calmly and setting boundaries, but it feels like nothing is working. I genuinely feel like I've been fair, offering a few nights while he figured things out, not refusing outright, and maintaining my personal space. But both Jenna and Matt are treating me as if I'm morally obligated to give him indefinite housing, which seems unreasonable to me. I'm worried that if I cave, it will set a precedent for other situations where family expects me to compromise my living situation and mental health for someone else's problems. I've started limiting contact with both of them because every interaction turns into guilt-tripping or arguments. I've also begun making plans to help him find alternative housing indirectly, sending him links to listings, connecting him with friends, and encouraging him to talk to our parents. But they seem to think I'm making excuses. So Reddit, am I the asshole here for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after his eviction? I feel like I'm being reasonable, but they insist I'm overreacting and not supportive of family. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after discovering a major secret about his fiancée. My brother, Ben, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We grew up close, but as adults, our paths diverged a lot. He's always been the charismatic, adventurous type, while I'm more of a planner and cautious person. Despite that, we've always had each other's backs, until recently. Ben got engaged about 8 months ago. His fiancée, Clara, seemed great at first. Charming, funny, and outwardly kind. I'll admit, I didn't know her that well, but I trusted my brother's judgment. The trouble started a few months ago when I happened to overhear a conversation between him and a mutual friend. It was vague at first, just references to keeping things quiet and family stuff, so I didn't think much of it. But then, over the course of a few weeks, I started noticing small inconsistencies in stories Clara would tell about her life. Dates didn't line up, events she claimed she attended seemed impossible, and there were moments where she was caught in outright contradictions. I decided to dig a little because something felt off. I spoke to a few people who knew her from her previous city, and the picture I got was concerning. It turns out Clara has a history of financial scams and manipulation. Not small things either. She's been accused multiple times of exploiting partners financially and emotionally. Some of it was under the radar, not criminal convictions, but enough that it painted a clear pattern of deceit. At first, I debated whether to say something. I didn't want to be the annoying sibling who ruins everything, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that my brother was blind to something important. I tried subtle warnings, bringing up general points about trust and honesty in relationships, but he brushed them off. He said I was being judgmental and that I was projecting negativity onto someone who loves him. About 2 months ago, I found out the last straw. Clara had apparently convinced Ben to co-sign a lease for an apartment she claimed she would pay for, but there were already outstanding debts attached to the lease that Ben didn't know about. It wasn't just the debts. People who had lived with her before had left unpaid utility bills and had threatening letters sent to Ben's address because she never updated her information. I confronted Ben with proof, giving him screenshots, receipts, and testimonies from people who had lived with her. He refused to listen, insisting that it was ancient history and that she had changed. The wedding planning has been a nightmare. Invitations have gone out, and most of our family is excited, but I feel trapped. I can't shake the feeling that by attending, I'd be tacitly endorsing Clara's behavior. I tried to reason with Ben again last week, explaining that if she truly loved him, she wouldn't have hidden her past or deceived so many people. He exploded, yelling that I was trying to sabotage his happiness and that I had no right to judge his fiancée. He accused me of being jealous and controlling. I finally told him I wouldn't attend the wedding. I explained that I couldn't in good conscience celebrate a relationship that I believe is built on manipulation and lies. He hasn't spoken to me since, and several family members have reached out to scold me for being dramatic and overreacting. They say it's my responsibility to support my brother, regardless of my personal feelings about his fiancée. Others, however, have quietly admitted they also had concerns about Clara and think I'm justified. The weirdest part is that Clara has started subtly posting about my absence on social media, framing it as me being the toxic sibling who can't accept happiness. Ben hasn't intervened, and I feel like I'm being painted as the villain despite having proof of her past and ongoing shady behavior. I've been trying to maintain distance because I don't want to get dragged into confrontation, but the wedding is in less than a month, and tensions are at an all-time high. I feel torn. Part of me wants to go just to keep the peace and avoid family drama, but another part of me thinks I would be betraying my own principles. I also can't help but wonder if staying away will actually protect my brother from future heartbreak or financial harm. On the other hand, I know there's a chance I'm overreacting or misjudging Clara, and maybe I'll be remembered as the sibling who ruined his big day. I haven't talked to anyone outside the family about this in detail because I don't want to be labeled as gossiping or spreading rumors, but I needed to get it off my chest. My heart is telling me that attending the wedding would be wrong, but my head is worried about irreparably damaging my relationship with my brother. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after discovering a concerning past about his fiancée and feeling that he's ignoring red flags? Character count, 6678 if you want. I can craft another story of similar length that has even more twists, family dynamics, and moral ambiguity, like some of the most popular posts on Reddit. It would feel almost cinematic in complexity. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he threatened my dog. I, 32F, have lived in my current house for about 5 years. It's a modest 3-bedroom house with a large backyard. I live alone with my dog. A 2-year-old golden retriever named Max is essentially my child. I adopted him as a puppy, trained him myself, and he's very well behaved, but he's protective of me and our home. My younger sister, Laura, 29F, recently got engaged to a guy named Mark, 30M. I've known him for about a year, and honestly, I've always had reservations. He's charming in public, but has a short temper and a tendency to make threatening jokes that don't always land as jokes. He also doesn't like dogs, which I knew from the beginning. Laura and I have always been very close, and I've tried to be supportive of her relationship, even if I didn't fully trust him. A few weeks ago, Laura called me saying she wanted to stay at my house for a couple of nights because her apartment was being fumigated. She said Mark would be with her. I didn't like the idea, but I agreed because it was only for 2 nights. I made it clear that Max is not aggressive and would likely just be excited, but I didn't want him confined or stressed. When they arrived, Max was excited but calm. Mark immediately started making comments about him, saying things like, "Why do you let that stupid dog roam around? Dogs just get in the way." I told him Max is friendly and trained, but Mark just laughed it off. Later, when I was cooking, Max brushed against Mark's leg, which he seemed to take as a personal affront. He snapped at Max, saying, "If you try that again, I'll kick you out of the house." I was shocked. I told him to back off, that Max doesn't deserve to be threatened, and that he needed to calm down. He laughed and said it was just a joke. The tension grew over the next day. Mark made several comments about the house, the dog, and me. At one point, I was on the couch with Max, and Mark started tapping on Max's head. I raised my voice, saying, "Do not touch him," and Mark said, "Relax, it's just a dog." Later, when we were all in the living room, Max started barking at a strange noise outside, and Mark yelled at him, "Shut up, you stupid mutt, or I swear I'll throw you outside." I was furious and told him that if he threatened Max again, he needed to leave immediately. Laura tried to downplay it, saying, "He's joking. Don't be so sensitive." I told her no, this was not acceptable. The next morning, I woke up to find Mark in the backyard yelling at Max because he had dug up a small patch of dirt. I intervened, telling him he could not speak to Max like that. He got on my face and said, "I don't care whose dog it is. I could knock this mutt out if I wanted to." At that point, I told him he needed to leave. Laura started arguing with me, saying, "You're overreacting. He didn't actually hurt the dog." I said that threats are unacceptable and that I would not allow him to stay. Mark stormed out, and Laura followed, saying I was ruining her engagement and being ridiculous. Laura has since been texting me nonstop, saying I'm being controlling and that I embarrassed her in front of her fiancé. She says I could have handled it differently and that I should have just let it slide for the sake of family harmony. I told her family harmony cannot come at the expense of safety, and Max's safety counts. She's now refusing to speak to me, and some mutual friends have messaged me saying maybe I was too harsh. I feel like I did the right thing. Max is my responsibility, and Mark made very clear that he was willing to threaten him physically. I don't trust him around my home or my dog anymore. I've offered to meet Laura somewhere outside my house to talk, but she's still upset. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he threatened my dog. Character count, 6,412 if you want. I can craft another story in the same style that's closer to 7,000 characters with more twists and dramatic interpersonal fallout, which tends to do very well in Reddit threads. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay in my house after she insulted my family. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger brother, Ryan, 28M. We grew up in a pretty tight-knit family, and even though we've both moved to different cities for work, we make it a point to see each other at least a few times a year. My parents live out of state, so most of the holidays have been our own little family thing, just the two of us or occasionally with our cousins. Ryan has been dating his fiancée, Emily, 27F, for about 3 years. I'll admit, I never particularly clicked with her. She's polite in person, but she has this way of making offhand comments that feel judgmental or dismissive. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it was just my imagination, but over time it started to become hard to tolerate. Fast forward to last month. Ryan and Emily had just gotten engaged, and they were making plans for a small, informal gathering at my place because I live in the city and have the space. I wasn't thrilled, but I agreed. A week before the event, Emily reached out asking if she could stay in my apartment for 2 nights before the party because it's easier than commuting. I was taken aback because she had her own apartment and we live less than a 20-minute drive apart. I politely told her that my place isn't really set up for guests overnight and I wasn't comfortable with it. She seemed annoyed but said she understood. The day of the gathering, Emily arrived with Ryan and a couple of his friends. From the moment she stepped in, the tension started. She commented on my furniture, my decor, and even the way I arranged snacks. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she just has a strong personality. But then she made a comment about my mom, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. She said something along the lines of, "I can't imagine why anyone would keep her old furniture. It looks so cheap and outdated. Don't you think it's time to let go?" I was shocked. My mother's things mean a lot to me, and I never expected a guest, let alone my brother's fiancée, to speak about them that way. I tried to redirect the conversation and keep the party going, but Emily didn't stop. Over the course of the evening, she made several subtle digs at my cooking, my job, and even my relationship status. It was exhausting. I kept exchanging looks with Ryan, expecting him to say something, but he mostly laughed nervously or tried to change the subject. By the end of the night, I had enough. I pulled Emily aside and told her that I didn't appreciate the way she spoke about my family, my home, or my life, and that if she continued making these kinds of remarks, I couldn't host her again. She immediately got defensive and accused me of being too sensitive and overreacting. I told her it wasn't personal. It was about respect. A few days later, Ryan called me furious. Apparently, he had told Emily about my boundaries regarding overnight stays, and she had taken it as a personal attack. He said I was being difficult and that I was jeopardizing their engagement by not letting her stay in my apartment. He claimed that families should be flexible and accommodating, especially for something as important as their wedding planning. I reminded him that she could stay at her own apartment, a nearby hotel, or even with her parents, and that asking me to host her overnight after all that had happened felt unreasonable. He accused me of being selfish and not supportive of his relationship, and the conversation ended with him saying he needed space from me for a while. Since then, I've been fielding messages from mutual friends and family, some saying I was harsh, and others saying I'm in the right. Emily has posted on social media about how some people just don't like change and implied that I'm jealous of her relationship with my brother. My parents are trying to stay neutral, but I can tell they are disappointed that my relationship with Ryan is strained. I feel like I'm stuck in a situation where either I compromise my comfort and respect for my own home and memories, or I let my brother's future wife dictate the terms of my space. I don't want to cause a permanent rift with Ryan, but I also don't want to let someone treat me and my home disrespectfully. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée stay in my apartment after she insulted my family and home. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a major secret about the groom. I, 28F, have always been close with my younger sister, Lily, 25F. We've been through a lot growing up, and even as adults, we still talk almost every day. Lily has always been a little dramatic and impulsive, but she's kind and loyal. I have a tendency to be more cautious and realistic, which sometimes leads to clashes between us. About 6 months ago, Lily announced she was engaged to a guy named Chris, 27M. At first, I was thrilled for her. He seemed charming, polite, and genuinely interested in her. I met him a few times at family gatherings, and he always seemed attentive and friendly. Lily was over the moon, and I was genuinely happy for her. A couple of weeks after the engagement, during a conversation with a mutual friend of theirs, I casually asked how they met. The friend laughed and said, "Oh, it was kind of messy. Chris had just broken up with his ex, and he basically jumped right into dating Lily. Not the best timing." I brushed it off, assuming people sometimes overshare in casual conversation. Things got more complicated about 2 months ago. I was helping Lily with some wedding planning tasks, like booking venues and tasting menus. During one of our planning sessions, Chris came over. While we were chatting, my phone buzzed, and it was an alert from a mutual friend who was in town. I stepped out briefly to respond and overheard a snippet of Chris's phone conversation with someone. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I caught him saying, "Don't worry, it's all under control. She has no idea I'm still talking to her, and it'll stay that way until after the wedding." I froze. My stomach dropped. I didn't hear the rest, but that line was enough to make my mind race. After he left, I asked Lily casually about Chris's ex. She said, "Oh, yeah, he dated someone briefly last year. We met a few months ago when he was already single. No big deal." Her description didn't match what I had overheard. I decided to dig a little more before confronting her. I spoke with a few mutual friends, and it turns out Chris had been in some kind of on-again, off-again situation with his ex until a month before he proposed to Lily. Some friends implied that he might have been hiding messages from the ex and possibly even lying about ending things. I tried to reason with myself. None of this was my business. I reminded myself that it was ultimately Lily's choice, and I shouldn't jump to conclusions. But the nagging feeling didn't go away. I felt trapped between wanting to protect my sister and respecting her autonomy. About a month ago, the tension reached a boiling point. I was at Lily's apartment, helping her with invitations when she brought up seating arrangements. I gently tried to bring up the concern, framing it as, "I just want to make sure everything is honest and above board. I overheard something about Chris and his ex, and I just want to be sure he's truly ready for this." Lily looked shocked. She immediately got defensive, insisting I was overreacting and told me not to spread gossip. She said she trusted Chris completely and that I had no right to interfere in their relationship. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to sabotage anything, but she told me it was none of my business and stormed out of the room. After that, I felt incredibly guilty, but also anxious. I couldn't stop thinking about the possibility that Lily was being blindsided, but I also didn't want to damage our relationship further. A week later, I finally decided to speak directly to Chris. I asked him if there was anything I should know regarding his past relationship. He laughed nervously and said, "Everything's over. I moved on. Lily's my priority now." I wanted to believe him, but something in his tone made me uneasy. The day of the rehearsal dinner arrived, and I made a decision. I told Lily that I couldn't attend the wedding until I had absolute confidence that Chris was fully committed and honest with her. She was furious, accusing me of being controlling and manipulative. She said I was ruining her special day with baseless accusations. Our parents tried to mediate, but Lily refused to listen to anything I said. She told me that if I didn't attend, I was cutting myself out of the family entirely. It's been a few weeks since that confrontation. The wedding is coming up, and I haven't bought a gift or RSVP'd. My parents are upset with me, claiming I should put my sister's happiness above my suspicions. Friends are divided. Some say I'm protecting my sister, while others say I'm overstepping and creating unnecessary drama. I'm struggling because I don't want to betray my sister, but I also don't want her to end up hurt if my suspicions are right. I feel like I'm in a no-win situation. I keep questioning if I'm being paranoid or if I'm morally obligated to step back and let her make her own mistakes. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I suspect her fiancé may not be entirely truthful about his past relationship. AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding after she insulted my home. So this is going to be long, and I'll try to make it as clear as possible. I, 34F, own a modest but cozy house in a suburban area. It's about 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and I've put a lot of work into decorating it to feel welcoming and personal. My sister, Jessica, 30F, has always had a flair for drama and luxury, and her idea of a nice home is very different from mine. She lives in a high-rise apartment downtown and has never had much interest in my home until recently. Jessica got engaged about 6 months ago, and she immediately started talking about her wedding. From the start, she made it clear that she didn't want a traditional venue and insisted on something intimate at a private home. My parents and my sister's fiancé, Mark, suggested renting a small hall or a fancy Airbnb, but she was adamant about having it at a house. Naturally, she brought up mine. I was hesitant but open. I asked what she had in mind, and she immediately started nitpicking. She said my house was cute for everyday life, but totally unfit for a wedding, especially since my backyard isn't exactly manicured like those in magazines. She complained about my furniture, my rug being too colorful, and even the curtains being too grandma. I told her that I'd done a lot of work to make it cozy and personal, and that it wasn't realistic to expect it to match a wedding Pinterest board. She laughed and said she could fix it with temporary rentals and decorations, which felt condescending. Despite this, I tried to be accommodating. I said she could come over and we could see if it was feasible. She came with Mark and immediately started making a long list of things she wanted me to buy or replace. A bigger table for the dining room, rented chairs for the living room, renting a tent for the backyard, and even repainting my walls. I gently reminded her that this was my house and that while I wanted to help, I wasn't planning on remodeling it for her wedding. She rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic and that it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Things escalated when she asked about the guest list. Her wedding is supposed to be about 60 people, and my house can comfortably fit maybe 20 inside, with another 10 to 15 in the backyard if we squeeze. I suggested maybe using a small venue after all, and she exploded. She accused me of being selfish, saying that I was putting my comfort over her dream wedding. She also said that if I didn't agree, she would just have her parents find another location. I told her fine, but at that point, I was already annoyed by how she had criticized everything about my home. A week later, she came back with a plan to make it work. She expected me to rent everything she wanted: tables, chairs, a fancy tent, extra lighting, and even a rented dance floor. I said no. I explained that while I was happy to host small gatherings, I wasn't turning my house into a wedding venue. She shouted that I was ruining her life and that I clearly didn't love her. I called my parents to explain my side. They told me I should try harder to accommodate Jessica because it's her big day. I said I was willing to help with decorations, maybe host a small bridal shower or rehearsal dinner, but the actual wedding at my house was not happening. My mom asked if I could just compromise and let her use the backyard, and I said maybe, but under strict limits. No renting large equipment, no transforming my house into something it's not, and I wouldn't be responsible for cleanup. My sister called me later and said those conditions were ridiculous and mean. Jessica eventually decided to book a rented venue, but she hasn't spoken to me much since. I feel like I set reasonable boundaries, but my parents keep saying I should have been more. My friends mostly support me, saying I shouldn't have to remodel or rent my house for someone else's dream wedding. I understand wanting a special day, but her demands and constant insults about my home feel unfair. The conflict has extended to family events now. My sister has been cold at birthdays and holidays, and she's made several passive-aggressive comments about my stinginess and lack of vision. I honestly didn't want to fight or to ruin her wedding. I just didn't think I should have to turn my personal home into a commercial venue. So, Reddit, AITA here. Should I have just let her do what she wanted even though it made me uncomfortable, but would have completely transformed my home? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.